Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the quiet hum of a California summer evening in 1977. You can almost feel the warmth radiating off the asphalt, the air carrying that faint smell of gasoline and roadside wildflowers. Somewhere on Interstate 5, you're just a traveler with a backpack, a thumb out, and 100 miles to go. You've got that naive optimism that tells you the next car will be the one. But here's the thing, this ride you're about to take, you probably won't survive this. At least, not in the way you think. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I'm curious to see where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand on the shoulder of the road, your jeans dusty from the walk, your hair catching in the breeze from passing cars. It's 1977, and hitchhiking is still that strange mix of romantic freedom and low-level danger, though everyone swears it's safe enough if you trust your gut. And right now, your gut says yes to the beige sedan, slowing down in front of you. Inside, a couple leans over. The man's got a lean build, late 20s maybe, with a smile just shy of awkward. The woman in the passenger seat has warm eyes, the kind that suggests she's the calm balance to his energy. They've got a baby seat in the back automatic. Proof in your mind that they're safe. I mean, who kidnaps someone with a baby in the car? You'll wish you hadn't asked that question. You toss your bag in, slide into the back seat, and feel the fabric sticking to your legs in the heat. The hum of the road swallows your small talk. The woman asks about your trip, and you give your usual answers. Visiting a friend, love the open road, college can wait. The man laughs a little too long at something you say, and you write it off as road boredom. But as the miles pass, something in the air shifts. Maybe it's the way the driver keeps glancing at the rearview mirror, as if checking you're still there. Or the way his wife goes quiet, staring at the dashboard as if she's rehearsing something in her mind. You look out the window and watch the landscape change from town edges to lonely stretches of nothing. Your gut, the same one that told you to get in the car, starts whispering something different now. They stop for gas in a small town you don't catch the name of. The man disappears inside, and the woman stays in the car. She turns, leans close, and says something strange. You seem like a nice girl. You must be careful who you trust. It's the kind of line that makes your skin prickle. You think about getting out, maybe pretending you're done with the ride. But before you can, the man's back, smiling again, offering you a soda like nothing happened. Back on the road, the world narrows to the sound of the engine and the occasional flash of headlights from passing cars. That's when he takes a shortcut. You don't remember agreeing to it, but the car is already turning off the main highway, the paved road giving way to a rougher one. The baby stirs in the back, whimpers, then goes quiet again. They stop in the middle of nowhere. The man reaches, under the seat and pulls out something you don't understand at first. A strange, box-like contraption with holes drilled into the side. He says something about just a game, his voice casual, almost playful. But the edges of his smile don't reach his eyes dot by the time you realize what's happening. Your wrists are bound, and that wooden box is sliding over your head. World outside vanishes, replaced by darkness and the sound of your own breathing echoing back at you. The air inside is warm, stale, tinged with the scent of plywood and metal. Your heart pounds so hard it almost drowns out his footsteps. Somewhere above the muffled black, you hear the woman's voice. She says something you can't make out, maybe a protest, maybe a warning. But the car door slams, the engine starts, and you feel the vibrations through the floor. You're moving again, only now you can't see. Can't guess where, and can't even tell if it's day or night. Historians still argue whether the 1970s carefree hitchhiking culture was naive trust or just a ticking time bomb waiting for the wrong ride. Tonight, you found the wrong ride. And as the hours blur into something longer, you realize you're not going home anytime soon. You lose track of time almost instantly. The box over your head turns the world into one long stretch of darkness, the air inside growing thicker by the minute. Every bump in the road jolts through your body, each turn throwing your balance. You can't tell if it's been 20 minutes or 2 hours only. That your legs ache, your shoulders burn from being bound, and your mouth is dry enough to crack. When the car finally stops, you hear the crunch of gravel under footsteps. The doors open and close, muffled voices float through the wood. You strain to catch words, but they melt into each other. Then you're lifted like a sack of something less than human and carried. You feel stares beneath whoever's carrying. You down, always down. A door creaks, hinges groaning in protest, and the air changes cooler now, with a faint, damp smell. You're set down on something hard. The box stays, the footsteps retreat. A door shuts, and the silence is so heavy. You can hear the tiny hiss of your own breathing through the wood slats. This could be the last sound you ever hear. Somewhere in the darkness of your own mind, you recall hearing about coffin torture from medieval Europe, how prisoners were locked in boxes so small they couldn't move. Their only sense of the outside world through slivers of air. You'd laughed it off in a history class once, thinking it was the stuff of horror films. But right now, you're living a modern version of it. Time slides past in strange ways. You try counting seconds to ground yourself, but your mind drifts. Hunger tugs at your belly. Thirst makes your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth. The air inside the box warms with your own breath until it's like sitting inside someone else's lungs. You think you hear the woman's voice again. This time closer, lower. She says something about keeping her calm and not too long. Then the man's voice cuts in, sharper, and you hear the shuffle of retreating footsteps. When the box finally comes off, the light burns. It's not bright, just a naked bulb hanging from the ceiling, but after hours of darkness, it's an explosion. You blink until shapes form. A bare concrete basement, a cot in the corner, a workbench lined with tools that don't look like they belong in a hardware store. Man crouches in front of you, smiling like he's greeting a house guest. He calls you Colleen, like you've already told him your name. He says you're going to stay here for a while, that it's for your own good. And then, like a magician, pulling a rabbit from a hat, he mentions something called the company. According to him, the company is a powerful secret organization that now owns you. They're everywhere watching, listening. If you try to escape, they'll know. If you talk to anyone, your family will pay. You don't know if he's lying, but he believes it so completely that the words land like truth. He unties your wrists, lets you drink water from a plastic cup. The cold slides down your throat like relief and terror mixed together. You want to run every cell in your body, screams for it, but there's the locked basement door, and beyond that, the invisible eyes of this so-called company. The wife hovers in the background, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. She doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just watches, as though she's calculating something you can't see. She brings you food later, plain bread, a slice of cheese, water again. She doesn't speak much, but her eyes meet yours for a moment, and you think you see pity? Or maybe that's just wishful thinking. Historians still argue whether psychological. Captivity, the kind that bends your mind, can be more dangerous than physical chains. In this basement, you start to understand. Both can keep you just as trapped. That night, or maybe it's day. Who knows? The box goes back on. The darkness returns, heavier now, because you know what's out there, and you can't have it. And as you curl your legs, trying to sleep in the cramped wood, a single thought keeps circling. If the company is real, you may never see the outside world again. You wake, or maybe you never really slept, when the box lid shifts just enough to let in a thread of stale air. The man's voice filters through the crack, telling you it's time to get used to your new home. You're lifted again, carried, and when the lid finally comes off, you're not in the basement anymore. This place is smaller, stranger. It's a wooden box within a room, a structure built just for you. The space inside is barely long enough for you to stretch your legs if you angle them just right. The ceiling is so low you can't sit upright. The air is warm, tinged with the dusty smell of plywood. He calls it the box, like it's some official term. You call it a coffin you can't escape. He explains, almost cheerfully, that you'll be spending most of your time in here. It's safer this way, he says. Safer for whom? He doesn't clarify. The hours blur. You begin to learn the rhythms. The squeak of the door hinges before the box lid opens. The thud of footsteps above you, that means someone's walking in the house. The faint hum of a refrigerator somewhere far away. Meals come irregularly, sometimes bread and water, sometimes nothing. When he does bring food, he lingers, talking about the company again. The company, he says, doesn't just monitor you, it monitors him. If he disobeys their rules, both of you will be punished. He talks about others they've caught, describing punishments in such detail you can almost see them. And yet, you've never seen another soul in this place except him and the wife. You think back to history lessons about isolation tactics in wartime, how soldiers captured by enemy forces were sometimes kept in dark, confined spaces to break their will. You'd read about Japanese POW camps in World War II, how sensory deprivation could unspool the mind. Back then, it was just a grim story in a textbook. Now, it's the air you breathe. The wife appears sometimes, her presence softer, quieter. She hands you a blanket one evening when the box feels like a freezer. Her fingers brush yours for a split second, just enough to remind you what human contact feels like. Then she steps back quickly, as if she's broken some rule. Days or weeks pass like this. The only light you see is the dim bulb that hangs when the lid is off. You start to measure time by your own body, how your nails grow until they scrape the plywood, how your muscles cramp from curling into the same position. The strangest part? You catch yourself waiting for him. The man, because even his voice, even his twisted lectures about the company, are the only disruption in the monotony. It's the same mental trick survivors of shipwrecks have described finding comfort in anything familiar, even if it's the thing holding you prisoner. 1. Afternoon, you hear laughter outside the box. Not cruel laughter, genuine, light-hearted. You strain to listen. There's music playing, the sizzle of a grill, voices of neighbors drifting through. The realization hits you like a punch. Life is going on out there. People are eating burgers, talking about the weather, and you are here invisible. Historians still argue whether concealment in plain sight makes a crime more disturbing. After all, your prison isn't in some remote bunker. It's in the home of a couple who probably wave to their neighbors every morning. That night, as you lie in the dark, you trace the grain of the wood with your fingertips. You imagine pushing your hand through it, splintering your way to open air. But the thought fades quickly, swallowed by the memory of his voice telling you that the company never loses track of its property. When sleep finally drags you under, it's filled with dreams of wide-open roads that never end and the sound of a car door locking from the inside. The next time the lid opens, it's not the man you see. It's her, the wife. She crouches low, peering in like she's afraid you might bite. There's a faint smell of coffee on her breath, the kind that tells you it's early morning outside, even though you haven't seen the sun in. Well, you've stopped guessing. She doesn't speak at first. Just sets down a plate, 2 slices of toast, a little jelly smeared unevenly, and a mug of something warm. The steam rises in slow curls. You take the mug, sip, and the bitter taste floods your mouth. Coffee, the real kind, not instant. For a second, you forget where you are. When you look up, she's still watching. Then, in the softest voice, she says, "You just need to do what he says." It's a small crack in the wall of silence she's kept. You want to press her, ask who the company really is. whether anyone's looking for you, but her eyes flick nervously toward the door, and she stands quickly, brushing crumbs from her hands. The man returns later, and with him the lectures. This time, he tells you a story about a woman who tried to run. He says she got as far as a bus station before the company caught her. They made an example of her, he says, drawing the words out slowly, as though savoring the fear they plant. It's the same psychological warfare you've read about in Cold War espionage cases. How intelligence agencies would weave elaborate fictions about omnipotent networks, ensuring no one dared defect. Historians still argue whether these scare tactics were more effective than physical force. Then comes the training. He calls it orientation. You call it conditioning. He makes you repeat phrases about obedience, safety, loyalty to the company. Sometimes you're rewarded a piece of fruit, a few more minutes with the box lid open. Sometimes you're punished hours without food, or the lid closed tighter so the air turns heavy. The wife drifts in and out of these sessions, usually. Silent, occasionally handing over a prop papers, a pen without looking you in the eye. But every so often, you catch her watching from the corner, as though she's silently weighing something. One evening, while the man is upstairs, she comes in alone. She kneels by the box, glances at the door, and whispers, "He's not lying," about the company. Her voice shakes, and before you can ask anything, she stands and walks out. That night, you can't sleep. Your mind races through possibilities. Is the company a real criminal network? A figment of his delusion? Or a lie so deep even she believes it? You start listening harder after that. You notice when the phone rings upstairs, his voice dropping low. You hear him pacing after dark, sometimes muttering, sometimes laughing, softly to himself. And then, one afternoon, he doesn't come. No lid opening, no water, no lectures, just silence. You lie there, counting heartbeats, until the quiet becomes unbearable. Your mind conjures every scenario. Maybe he's been arrested. Maybe the company's moved on to its next victim. Or maybe he's just testing you. Hours later, the wife appears. She's pale, her hair pulled back tightly, and her hands tremble as she sets down water. You catch her wrist before she can pull away. She doesn't fight. She just stares at you for a long moment and says, "Don't make him angry." It's not hope she's offering. It's survival advice. And somehow, that's worse. You hear the garage door open. The sound is low, metallic, vibrating faintly through the floorboards. He's back. You stay still in the box, not because you think it'll help, but because part of you wants to hear how he enters, if his steps are hurried or calm, if there's the scrape of something being dragged. This time, he's humming. An old song off-key. The lid swings open and light-blinding compared to the dim you're used to floods in. He's holding a plastic shopping bag. The logo is for a store you used to pass on the way to work. The sight of it, so ordinary, is almost more jarring than his presence. From the bag, he pulls a paperback novel, a small flashlight, and oddly a crossword puzzle book. Keeps the mind sharp, he says, setting them beside you. You want to ask if this is a peace offering or a bribe. Instead, you just look at him, he explains, in that slow, patronizing tone, that the company likes to keep its assets mentally active. A sharp tool lasts longer, he says, as if you're not a person but some kind of equipment. Your brain instantly flashes to that mainstream historical fact about World War II codebreakers, how intelligence agencies would recruit crossword champions for their puzzle-solving skills. The irony isn't lost on you. Here you are, being trained with word puzzles, but not to crack enemy codes, just to keep you obedient and contained. When he leaves, you flick the flashlight on, point it at the page, and notice something strange. Someone's already filled in a few words. Not random ones phrases like, "Help me," and "watch her." You can't tell if it's the wife's handwriting or his. Either way, the message isn't comforting later while you're tracing. The puzzle grids with your finger. You hear footsteps outside. Not from upstairs outside, in the yard. They crunch against gravel. Pause near the wall where you're hidden. You hold your breath. A voice calls out a neighbor, maybe asking. Something muffled. The man answers casually, like nothing's wrong. Historians still argue whether the most chilling kidnappings are those where the victim is mere feet from people who could save them. You're living the debate in real time. The wife comes down. That evening, she doesn't bring food, just sits cross-legged beside the box, clearly nervous. He's in a good mood tonight, she says, as though that's cause for celebration. Then she adds, "I'm sorry. You want to ask for what? For her silence? For being part of this? For not helping you run when she's had chances?" But her eyes flick to the door, and she's gone before you can speak. The crossword book becomes your clock, your companion. You start marking the days with small pen dots in the corner of each page. But soon, you realize some dots are missing. Erased, or maybe replaced with new ones that don't match your count. That's when it hits you. Someone is inside your time, changing it. The first time you wake up with the lid open, you think you're dreaming. The air is cool, the overhead bulb humming faintly, and no one's in the room. For a long moment, you just lie there, frozen, your brain trying to decide whether this is a test. Then, from upstairs, you hear it laughter. Two voices, faintly overlapping. The man and the wife, talking quickly in tones that sound almost normal. You catch fragments meeting next week. And he's not ready yet. That last part is enough to jolt you upright. Not ready for what? You push yourself up until your shoulders strain against the narrow opening, scanning. The garage. It's exactly as you've memorized a tool bench along the left wall. Dusty lawnmower in the corner. A faded calendar still on last month's page. But now you notice something new. A large plastic bin under the workbench. The lid is ajar, and inside is a heap of papers. You can't reach it from the box, but you fix its location in your mind. If you ever get another opening, that's where. You'll look first. Your movement must have made noise, because the man appears in the doorway. No humming this time, just that quick, assessing stare. Awake early, huh? He says. You don't answer. Instead of closing the lid, he sits on the workbench, holding a thermos. Ever heard of Ming Kultra? He asks almost casually. You nod, of course, you've heard of it. The CIA's Cold War mind control experiments, the ones. Historians still argue about whether they were science or sadistic chaos disguised as research. He grins. The company learned from their mistakes. No drugs, no shock therapy, just patience and isolation. It's the kind of line that would feel absurd if you weren't living in the exact conditions he's describing. Later, when the wife brings dinner, you try a gamble. What happens when I'm ready? You ask, keeping your voice low. She freezes for half a second, then mutters, Don't ask me that, before slipping out. That night, you're left alone again with the crossword. Book. Only this time, the next unfinished puzzle, as the words count the nights already penciled into the grid. You realize with a cold twist in your stomach, it's not just your time they're controlling. They want you to know they're controlling. The bulb overhead flickers once, then steadies. You stare at the plastic bin across the garage, counting heartbeats, wondering if whatever's in there holds your before or your after. The first sign of the shift is so small you almost miss it. The man comes down, opens the lid, and instead of ordering you to crawl out, he says, Stretch your legs, out in the yard. You blink at him, certain you've misheard. But no, he's standing there with a sweatshirt in one hand, his gaze flat but not angry. You slide out of the box, your knees unsteady, the air feeling almost sharp in your lungs after so long breathing wood and dust. Outside, the late afternoon sun is low and amber, casting long shadows over the patchy grass. The wife stands near, a back porch, arms folded, watching. Her expression is unreadable, but she doesn't look away. You walk a slow lap around the yard, every step like a tiny rebellion. The breeze smells faintly of honeysuckle from somewhere nearby. For a fleeting moment, you think I could run. But then your eyes catch the chain-link fence, the heavy padlock on the gate, and beyond that, an empty road with no houses in sight. Back inside, he tells you you've earned a privilege and can spend part of the day upstairs provided. You follow the rules. No speaking unless spoken to. No touching the phone. No approaching the front door. It's strange how quickly the human brain starts treating scraps of freedom as feasts. You sit at the kitchen table, sipping tea the wife makes. She doesn't meet your eyes, but she doesn't look away entirely either. That night in the box, you think about the psychological term you once read, Stockholm Syndrome. Historians still argue whether it's a real condition or a media invention. You can feel why it's debated, how fear and survival and gratitude can twist together into something unrecognizable. The next day, you're given another yard break. This time, you catch something new, faint graffiti on the underside. of the porch deck. 4 letters scratched into the wood. Help Dot. It's too crude to know if it's fresh or decades old. But you run your fingers over it before he calls you back in, letting the splinter catch against your skin. A small proof that you aren't the first to want out. That night, you can't stop thinking about the porch, the graffiti, and whether the message ever reached anyone who could read it. Morning comes in with a different rhythm. You hear him upstairs, talking on the phone. His voice is lower than usual, almost cautious. Yes, she's coming along. No, not yet. They'll get her when it's time. The last line hangs in. Your head like smoke, you can't wave away. They'll get her. Who's they? And more importantly, where would time lead you? When he finally appears, he's carrying the plastic bin you spotted days ago. He sets it down next to the box and flips the lid. Inside are files, manila folders, stuffed with papers, photos, even small cassette tapes. You'll need to be familiar with these, he says, handing you the first folder. It's labeled with a name you don't recognize. The contents are strange surveillance photos of ordinary-looking people, handwritten notes about their schedules, even grocery receipts dot as you leaf through them. You remember a fringe tidbit you once heard on a late-night radio show about a shadow network of watchers who compiled private details on people they'd never meet. Supposedly, the information was for future operations, though. No one ever confirmed what that meant. You never believed it. Now the pages feel like they're burning your fingertips. Over the next hour, he quizzes you not on facts about the people, but on patterns. What do you notice about where they shop? How often they leave the house? It's the kind of cold, methodical analysis you'd expect from an intelligence briefing, not a hostage situation. When you hesitate, his eyes harden. Pay attention. Someday, this will keep you alive. You almost ask alive where? But bite it back. Later, when he leaves to take a call, the wife steps into the garage. She glances at the open bin, then at you. Don't memorize too much, she says quickly, or you'll start dreaming about them. That's when they know you're ready. She's gone before you can press her for more. That night, lying in the box, you try to push the faces from your mind, but they keep surfacing, people smiling in parking lots, carrying groceries, bending down to tie a child's shoe. All ordinary moments, all frozen in someone else's plan. Historians still argue whether fate is a series of accidents or the sum of other people's intentions. From where you're lying, it feels like you're living proof that either can be a trap. The pattern shifts again 3 days later. This time, you're not taken to the yard or the kitchen. You're led to a small, windowless room at the far end of the house. A single table sits in the middle, 2 chairs facing each other, and a tape recorder between them. He gestures for you to sit. The fluorescent light overhead buzzes, flickering every so often like it's having trouble staying awake. Tell me about the 3rd folder, he says. No greeting, no preamble. You know which one he means. It's the file with the man in the gray jacket, dozens of photographs of him walking a dog, drinking coffee at a cafe, unlocking a silver sedan. His name was printed on a sticky note. David T. Wallace. You start describing the routines you noticed, but halfway through, you realize he's not actually listening. He's watching you, studying your face, your hands, the pauses between your sentences. When you finish, he leans back. You're getting better. You see the patterns now. That's promising. You want to ask better at what? But you've learned that questions can be dangerous currency here, Dot. Then he slides a different folder toward you. This one has only one photograph inside grainy, taken at night. It shows a car parked at the edge of a forest road, trunk open. You can just make out a figure in the shadows. You'll remember this, he says. This is where it happens. Before you can speak, he stands and leaves, taking the folder with him. You're left alone with the tape recorder. It's already running, the reels spinning lazily. You can hear your own breathing in the playback hiss. You wonder if the real purpose of this room isn't interrogation, but conditioning, making your own voice part of the trap. That night, back in the box, you keep replaying the image in your head. The car, the forest, the open trunk. It's too specific to be random, Dot. It reminds you of something you once read about the Tame and Shut case, a famous unsolved death in Australia, where a man's body was found on a beach. No ID, only a scrap of paper in his pocket. Historians still argue if it was suicide, murder, or espionage. The photo he showed you has the same cold absence of context, the same demand that you fill in the missing story. You fall asleep wondering if you're supposed to be the detective here, or the next photograph in someone else's folder. The wife wakes you before dawn. No words, just a hand on your shoulder, urgent but not rough. She gestures for you to follow. You crawl out of the box, your legs prickling with pins and needles, and pad softly after her through the dim hallway. In the kitchen, the overhead light is off. Only the faint blue glow from the fridge spills across the floor. She hands you a piece of toast wrapped in a napkin. Eat fast, she whispers. You don't dare ask why. Minutes later, you hear the man's boots on the porch. When he enters, he's carrying a heavy canvas bag. He drops it on the counter with a dull clink of metal. The smell of cold air and motor oil comes with it. Truck's gassed, he says. We leave in an hour. Your stomach knots. We not you. That means you're part of whatever comes next. He doesn't bother with the blindfold this time. Instead, you're shoved into the truck's passenger seat. The wife sits behind you, silent. The bag rests between your feet like a sleeping animal. Every bump in the road makes something metallic inside shift and knock. The drive takes you out, past the edge of town, through stretches of farmland that fade into thick pine forest. The air grows colder, sharper. You catch glimpses of frost along the ditches, sparkling in the early sun. Finally, he turns down a narrow dirt road. The trees close in until you feel like you've slipped into a different world, one that smells of wet leaves and silence. When the truck stops, you realize with a jolt, it's the same place from the grainy photograph. The forest road. The open space where the car had been parked. He cuts the engine. No one moves for a moment. You can hear your heartbeat over the ticking of the cooling engine. Out, he says. You step onto the frozen ground. The sound of your boots crunching the frost is absurdly loud. The wife remains by the truck, eyes scanning the trees. He opens the canvas bag and pulls out something you can't quite see, but it makes a muffled thunk as it hits the ground. You're going to dig, he says, pointing to a patch of earth where the frost is thin. A spade is shoved into your hands. The handle is cold enough to bite. As you press the blade into the soil. You think about a quirky archaeological tidbit you once read. That soil holds a memory of what was buried in it, detectable centuries later. Historians still argue whether it's truly reliable science or just romantic speculation. Right now, you don't care about science. You care about what he remembers being buried here, and why you're the one unearthing it. After 10 minutes, the spade hits something solid. He crouches beside you, brushing away the dirt with his gloved hands. When the shape emerges, you realize it's not a box or a container. It's a large, weathered suitcase. The suitcase looks older than you expected. Scuffed leather, brass corners dulled to a muddy green. The kind of thing you'd expect in a 1940s train station, not buried under a layer of forest frost. He taps it once with his glove, like knocking on a door only he's allowed to open. Lift it, he says. You hesitate, partly from the weight, partly from the gut-deep feeling that whatever's inside isn't meant to see daylight again. The wife has moved closer now, watching with her arms crossed, her breath making quick. Clouds in the cold air. You grip the handle. It's stiff and cracked, and the suitcase resists leaving the ground, as if the earth itself is reluctant to let go. When you finally drag it free, clods of dirt fall from its sides like pieces of an old secret breaking away. He kneels and flicks the clasps open. The metal snaps sound far too loud in the hush of the forest. Inside, not money, not weapons, just paper. Stacks of envelopes, each sealed and numbered in black marker. Some are yellowed, the edges curling. Others look newer, like they were added recently. He pulls one at random and hands it to you. Read it. Your fingers shake as you tear it open. The handwriting inside is cramped, almost frantic. It describes without names or dates an act you can barely comprehend, a disappearance, meticulously planned and carried out. The details are chilling in their precision, and you realize it's not written as a confession, but as instructions. You glance up. What is this? He smirks faintly. A manual. The wife shifts uncomfortably, and for the first time you catch something in her face, not fear, exactly, but a weariness, like she's carried this knowledge too long. The wind moves through the trees, whispering in a language you wish you didn't imagine translating. You think about a mainstream historical fact you once learned. During the Cold War, entire dead drop caches were buried in forests across Europe, filled with coded instructions and cash for sleeper agents. Many have never been found. This feels like that, except you've just found one. He takes the envelope back, slides it into the pile, and closes the suitcase. "This is why you're here," he says. "To keep the chain unbroken." You want to argue, to ask what the chain means. But something about the way he hefts the suitcase into the truck makes you stay quiet, as you climb back into the passenger seat. You glance over your shoulder. The patch of disturbed ground looks like it's already trying to swallow the past again. Historians still argue whether truth is something you dig up or something you bury deeper. The drive back is quieter than you expect. No radio, no idle chatter, just the hum of the truck's engine and the occasional thump of the suitcase shifting in the back. You keep your hands in your lap, fingers still tingling from the cold earth you dug through. He doesn't take the same route home. Instead, the truck winds through back roads you've never seen, skirting wide, empty fields where winter grass lies flat and colorless at one point. You pass a boarded-up gas station, its rusted pumps leaning like tired sentinels. You remember a quirky tidbit in rural parts of the U.S. Some abandoned gas stations are left intact as time capsules, stocked with their original goods for future historical study. Historians still argue whether this preserves history or just delays decay. By the time you recognize a stretch of road, you're only a mile from the house. The wife breaks the silence. "What happens now?" She asks, not to you, but to him. He keeps his eyes on the road. We wait. The weight of that word lodges in your chest. Wait for what? When you pull into the driveway, he doesn't put you back in the box right away. Instead, he carries the suitcase into the living room, sets it on the floor, and unlocks it again. The envelopes are neatly stacked, but he adds something new, a small black notebook from his coat pocket. It's worn, the edges fraying, but the handwriting inside is surprisingly neat. Dates, locations, single names, some of which have been crossed out. Others have stars beside them. You can't help leaning forward. One name stands out because it's yours. You jerk back, but he doesn't seem to notice. He flips to a blank page, writes something down, then shuts the notebook and tucks it under the envelopes. The wife meets your eyes for a brief second, and it's the first time her look isn't unreadable. It's warning. That night, when you're back in the box, you can't sleep. Your mind replays the way your name looked in that neat, careful script. You've been cataloged, archived like a specimen in a collection. Somewhere in the dark, you hear footsteps upstairs, then the sound of the front door opening. You strain to listen, soft voices outside, too muffled to make out. Then the engine of the truck starting. You count the seconds until the sound fades. When silence returns, it feels heavier than the box's wooden lid. You wake to the creak of the lid above you. The wife's face appears, pale in the half-light. She doesn't speak at first, just reaches down, grips your wrist, and pulls you up. Her hands are cold, trembling slightly. He's gone. She Whispers. We have maybe an hour. Your legs protest as you stand, pins and needles firing through muscles that have been cramped too long. She doesn't wait for you to recover. Instead, she's already moving toward the kitchen, motioning for you to follow. On the table sits the suitcase, open again. The envelopes are gone. In their place, the black notebook lies dead center, like an invitation. She opens it to the page with your name. Beneath it, there are coordinates numbers that mean nothing to you until she points at them and says, "It's a location. He's taking you there next." Her voice wavers, but there's no time to ask why. She flips further back, showing you other names with their own coordinates, all crossed out. Those people, they didn't come back. Outside, the wind rattles. The loose pane in the living room window. The sound feels sharper now, like a clock ticking. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your mind during World War II. Resistance networks used innocuous-seeming address books to hide escape routes or execution lists. Historians still argue whether certain pages were meant to save lives or mark targets. Looking at the notebook in front of you, you're not sure which category you fall into. The wife pulls a folded paper from her pocket, a map, worn at the creases. If you leave now, follow this path through the woods. It'll take you to the old train yard. From there, you can disappear. Your pulse spikes. The idea of escape feels both electric and impossible. Why are you helping me? She hesitates. Because I didn't help the others. There's a sound outside a car door slamming. She shoves the map into your hands. Go. You don't look back as you slip out the back door, the cold biting your face. The forest swallows you in seconds, its branches clawing at your jacket. Somewhere, behind you, the front door of the house opens. His voice cuts through the air, low but unmistakable. You start to run. The map shakes in your hands as you push through the underbrush, the paper growing damp from your breath and sweat. The woods are denser here, the light thinner. Every snap of a twig sounds like it's broadcasting your position. You glance back. Only once. Between the trunks, you think you see movement, a dark figure keeping pace. You tell yourself it could be a trick of the wind, but your feet move faster. The map's path veers left toward a shallow stream. The water is sluggish, rimmed with ice at the edges. You wade in without hesitation, hoping the current will mask your trail. Cold shoots up your legs like electric shocks, numbing you to the knees. Halfway across, you remember a quirky historical tidbit. During Prohibition, bootleggers used shallow creeks to evade bloodhounds, sometimes walking for miles in freezing water. Historians still argue whether it was more effective than just hiding in plain sight. Right now, you're rooting for the creek method. On the far bank, you find an abandoned hunting shack. The door hangs crooked, and inside, dust lies thick on everything except a single fresh set of footprints. You freeze, listening. Then a voice close. You're making this harder than it needs to be. It's him. You bolt through the shack's back door, bursting into a clearing. Ahead, the skeletal frame of the old train yard rises out of the frost-rusted rails, curling into nothing. Carriages tipped on their sides like dead whales. You don't stop until you reach the largest of the derelict cars. Inside, the air smells of oil and wet iron. In the corner, under a torn tarp, is a shape you almost step on another suitcase. Your breath comes ragged as you flip it open. Inside, more envelopes, but these aren't sealed. Each one holds photographs, grainy, black and white, each showing a different person. Some faces are blurred, others staring straight into the lens. And then you find one you recognize. Yourself. Standing in the forest earlier today, the photo developed in impossible time. Behind you, a floorboard groans. You turn. He's in the doorway, smiling faintly. He steps inside, the doorway framing him like a dark portrait. His boots crunch on broken glass, the sound unnervingly steady. You take an involuntary step back, your shoulder brushing the cold steel wall of the carriage. You were never supposed to see that notebook, he says, glancing at the suitcase. But I suppose curiosity was inevitable. The light filtering through the warped metal slats slices his face into strips half shadow, half pale skin. He gestures toward the photographs, the envelopes spilling out like the aftermath of a paper storm. Every one of them thought they'd gotten away. Your grip on the map tightens, crumpling it. Why me? He shrugs, as if it's the simplest thing in the world. Patterns. You fit one. A mainstream historical fact flickers in your mind. FBI profilers in the 1970s built entire databases around behavioral patterns, mapping similarities between victims to predict future targets. Historians still argue whether this saved more lives than it endangered by narrowing focus too much. Right now, you're painfully aware of being inside someone's private database. He takes another step, closing the space. Run again if you want, he says softly. The end will be the same. But before he can move further, a sound splits the air, a train horn, impossibly close. You glance toward the tracks outside, where a freight engine you hadn't noticed is crawling past. Its size blots out everything else. A moving wall of steel dot. You make your decision in a heartbeat. You lunge for the far door, throw it open, and leap down into the gravel, hitting hard but staying upright. The horn blasts again, masking his shout behind you. You weave between the passing cars, heart hammering, until you break free on the other side. A forest waits like an open mouth. You run into it, the sound of the train swallowing the world behind you, Doc. By the time the horn fades, so has every trace of him. You don't stop, not when the tree's thin, not when the outline of the highway appears, not even when headlights sweep across your path and a startled driver brakes hard. Dot. It's only when you're in the back seat of a police cruiser, clutching the crumpled map, that you allow yourself to breathe. Days later, the authorities search the house, the train yard, the woods. They find no man, no wife, no suitcase, not even the notebook. Somewhere, you imagine, The list continues: names, coordinates, stars, and your own entry, crossed out but never erased. Asterisk, you lean back, letting the hum of the imagined train fade into something softer, something safe. The air in the room around you feels warmer now, calmer. The shadows you've been picturing all night lose their sharp edges, melting into gentle shapes that hold no threat dot in your mind. The cold metal of the carriage gives way to the smooth curve of your pillow. The scent of rust drifts out of memory, replaced by something familiar and comforting. The footsteps that once followed you through the trees slow, then stop entirely. You picture them turning away, fading into a path you no longer have to walk. Forest itself transforms. The branches no longer claw, but sway lightly in a breeze that carries only the quiet hum of night. The spaces between the trees widen until they dissolve into an open field under a deep, steady sky. You realize that the story's pulse has been slowing for a while now, each beat a little softer, each image a little further away. The train horn you heard earlier is just a low sigh now, somewhere far off, harmless and fading dot. It's safe to let go of the chase, to stop scanning the dark for movement. The ground beneath you feels solid, steady, warm dot in this last stretch. Before sleep, your breathing evens out, your heartbeat finding a slow rhythm to match it. The details blur, the sharpness gone, until all that's left is the easy drift into whatever dream waits next. And just like that, the story closes quietly, gently leaving you here, safe in the glow of your own space.